What's the ideal minimal amount of steroid you have to take to actually get good muscle gains versus HRT dosages? If you want to know the answer to that question, stay tuned. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your weekly 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. Glad you can join us on this 5th day of November in the year 2025. We're going to go right into the questions. The first two questions on this show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Have you ever experienced with a first-time client a, quote, unexpected result in a good way that actually surprised you with the result? Or do you think you kind of always know how they're going to look for a first show?
You know, it's a good question because, usually I think that I know how they're going to look usually. And there have been people that have surprised the crap out of me. Like when I first started working with them, I'm like, all right, I'll get them in the best shape possible. And we'll do our best. Because let's face it, I get anyone in shape. I mean, I can get anyone in contest shape if they're willing to work hard. So, but some people have never competed. They don't even know what they have under there. And, I've worked with men and women that their bodies transformed miraculously when all that body fat came off their midsection and lower back. And I've had literally men and women both win shows, like overalls. And I couldn't have predicted it in a million years prior to starting with them because you just couldn't see it. I don't think they saw it themselves. So you never know. And I always tell people, you never know what your potential is until you start. If I look back at pictures of myself when I first started after, getting out of running, I was lean and everything like that, but I never could have ever suspected that I could have been as big as I was. So you just don't know what your potential is until you actually try. And so when people come to me and say, everyone told me I don't have potential to be a pro, this and that. I mean, Guy Cisternino told me that. He's like, all these coaches said I don't have potential to be a pro. I said, why are you listening to what anyone else says? I said, do you feel you can do it inside? He goes, yeah. I said, then you can do it. And he obviously achieved it. Was a very good pro. So don't ever, judge a book by its cover until you figure out what's inside.
Second question, again, these first two from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. I work out 5 days a week during your training guide and the rest on the weekend for 2 days. Do you feel like the body recovers better taking time off during the week 1 day or the 2 days in a row method like I've been doing? My life schedule doesn't give me any time to be able to work out on the weekends, or does it truly matter as long as you're getting adequate rest?
I've done it both ways. And I think when I was at my peak of my power, so to speak, and I was lifting as heavy as I was, I think that the 3 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off probably worked better for me. But to tell you the truth, it's nice to have 2 days in a row off, and you really do recover really well, especially if you have a weak body part. You can train that weak body part after the 2 days off, and you get a really good workout out of it. So there are benefits to both ways. If your schedule doesn't allow and you have to take the 2 weekends off, then that's the answer to your question. It's fine. Sometimes it's just hard to do 5 days in a row. So try to do your weaker body parts earlier in the week, and the body parts that are better, later in the week, because they don't need as much energy, so to speak, because you're obviously there. It's a body part that grows and responds well. I haven't found a problem doing it either way. I always find that whenever my schedule allows, like nowadays, I just kind of go by my schedule. Sometimes I take, if I have my kids over the weekend, I have 2 days in a row off. If I don't have my kids that weekend, I'll take days off interspersed. And so I do it both ways. 1 week I do it one way, 1 week I do it the next day. And you know what? Sometimes that works well too, because it's like your body never knows when it's getting a day off. It never knows when it's working out. And that seems to, sometimes shock the body in a positive way. By the way,
questions.
Yeah, by the way, these two questions, I just want to bring up these questions were from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. If you want to download it, it's on the iTunes store and the Android store. It's $29 a month. You get Dave Palumbo, me, in your back pocket as your coach. All my writings, all my videos are on there, all my protocols, drug protocols, off-season, pre-contest, beginner, advanced, women, men, detoxifications. I answer everyone's questions in an open forum, so you see everyone's questions and answers. It's a really good learning experience. And I do a Q&A video every single week for the app members. So that's an extra Ask Dave you get as an app member. Plus, we put up a workout every week. It's a really, really good learning experience. Like I said, it's like having like a little library in your back pocket of all the great information. And if you don't know something, you can just ask me a question and I'll answer it. So it's a great thing. The holidays are coming up. If you're looking for a good stocking stuffer to buy for someone, for $29 a month, you can't go wrong. Thank you for all the support.
Let's take questions from our YouTube community page. Natural protocols for drying out before a competition instead of diuretics. Is there any that come to mind or have been researched?
I usually use herbal diuretics for the natural guys or women. There's probably the most potent herbal diuretic is called Uva ursi. It's an herb. It works really well. I wouldn't say it's as potent as diazide, but it's pretty close. You could overdo the stuff. But what I usually do is do about 800 milligrams of Uva ursi with each meal the day before the show. So if the show's on Saturday morning, on Friday, every meal I take 800 milligrams with that. And I'll cut fluids maybe around 6:30 to 7:30 the night before the show and go down to sips at that point so the person dries out. It works really well. You don't have to take it. Never take these, even the herbal diuretics, don't take them for a whole week. You're going to dehydrate the crap out of yourself. You're going to have a headache, which is basically you having a hangover. Not good. It's unnecessary. The herbals work. You just need a little bit more of them, but you still do it just the day before the show. And if you try it, I think you'll get some good results. Like I said, the reason I like diazide is because it's more predictable. Because you take, 25 milligrams, I know how it works. I know on most people it's going to work pretty much the same. And if it doesn't, and I know what how long it takes to work, so you can make adjustments. With the herbals, it's kind of sometimes it's like a crapshoot. You have to kind of just give the 800 milligrams per meal and hope that the person dries out from it. But usually it does work pretty well. Also, Sid, I think we need to bring up the Titan medical sale.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Let me pull it up.
Okay.
You texted me a little while ago. So Titan Medical, our good friends at TitanMedicalCenter.com, they have BPC for $250 instead of $300, or BPC and TB 500 paired together for $475 instead of $600. So again, you have a discount on BPC and TB 500 paired together. Discounts on both. If you go to their website, TitanMedicalCenter.com, whatever your order form is, type in either Dave Palumbo or RxMuscle or mention that over the phone. They will give you the royal treatment on this and any other treatments or any other therapies.
Yeah, those are my two favorite peptides. Everyone always asks me, what peptides do you like? There's a million peptides out there. There's very few that I use on a regular basis. These are two that I use because they're healing peptides. I've told you this before, because I had thyroid cancer, I don't ever use GH because I'm just paranoid that, if there's any lingering around someplace. So for me, GH was a great recovery tool that you could use. And I'm not using it anymore. So to have a peptide that I actually think, since I've been using the TB 500 and BPC 157, I actually feel like it heals better than GH. GH is obviously a better muscle builder because these other peptides don't build muscle, but for healing tissue and stuff like that and reducing inflammation, they're really, really good. And this is a huge sale. So, if I were you, I'd get in there right now and take advantage of it because that's a big savings, especially if you buy the combination. Because I use the combination pretty much almost every month. I at least use the BPC every month, but I usually, when sales come up like this, I'll throw the TB 500 in there as well, kind of as a dual thing. And let's face it, we're always a little sore somewhere, and so, whatever body part seems to be, lagging a little bit and hurting a little bit, you can put it into that area and it's very, very noticeable. So give it a shot. I think you'll be very happy with the results.
Your thoughts on testosterone gel, but specifically for women?
I'm not a big testosterone for women, person. And the reason is because the stuff can cause side effects. And I know that the dosages they give women are low. And, but what happens is, when you take testosterone directly, okay, as opposed to in women's bodies, they normally produce a hormone known as DHEA in their adrenal glands, and then their body converts what it needs to testosterone, okay? Once you directly take testosterone, you're forcing your body to have a certain level in your blood, okay? Which for your body might be double, triple what your body normally produces, okay? Which might be too much. And the problem with testosterone is, and if you look at, I always go back and say, let's see what happens to a boy when he goes through puberty, right? So a boy hits about 12 years old. He starts producing more testosterone in his body. And all of a sudden he starts changing, right? His voice can get a little deeper, raspy, whatever. And his jaw starts growing. All the side effects, or all the effects, male, masculine, secondary sex characteristics that occur with puberty. But it doesn't happen in 6 months. It doesn't happen in 6 weeks. It takes, years, right? It could take 6 years to happen. So it's a cumulative type of thing. So a woman taking testosterone replacement might feel better and everything like that, because obviously she's taking testosterone, but it might be too much for her. And usually it is. And there can be side effects that become cumulative that she doesn't realize are happening until it's too late. And then she has them, and then you can't reverse them. So you got to be very careful with that. I like to opt for DHEA replacement. For women, I have guys that contact me, their wives are, hitting 40, 45, 50 years old. Sex drives hurt a little bit. I say, give them 50 milligrams a day of DHEA. You can buy it from Life Extension. You don't even need a prescription for this stuff. See how that works. This way their body will convert what it needs into testosterone. But the body is determining not the doctor. Likewise, if a woman wants a little boost in building muscle and immune system and maybe even a little sex drive, she can take Anavar. Anavar is great because Anavar has no side effects in terms of, masculinizing side effects. And so I just think that's a better way to go. I think now with these clinics, they like to immediately prescribe testosterone for women because it's cheap, number one, and it's, it seems to be an approved type of treatment. If you're going to take testosterone, my suggestion is to take my Testalized product, 3 pills twice a day, women or man, because what it does is it reduces DHT conversion. So not to be confused with DHEA. So testosterone can convert to estrogen, as we know, but in a woman's body, more likely it will convert to what's called DHT, or dihydrotestosterone, that's what causes the side effects, the hair thinning, potential acne on the face, and the male secondary sex characteristics like voice. So if you can reduce the DHT conversion, which is what Testalized will do, it'll be a safer way to take your testosterone replacement.
Question about EAA. We've talked about EAAs as well as quote unquote luxury supplements. So he acknowledges that EAAs are somewhat of a luxury supplement, but going the route of using them, what would you recommend as far as when to take them? Best time to take them to truly get your money's worth out of using them?
Yeah, we have a product obviously from Species Nutrition called Amino Evolved. It's all fermented amino acids. We don't get the amino acids from barbershops in China from the human hair that they collect. We actually, it's made from bacteria fermenting glucose, essentially creating the amino acids. And the great thing about these aminos is that they're something that once again, we call it a luxury. I call it a luxury item because it's not something you absolutely need. But if you have a little extra money and you've already bought the stuff that you do need, like the vitamins, the minerals, the essential fats and the fiber, and you got everything, you're already doing the right thing, and you want to spend a little more. The best time I always felt was during your training. So in other words, if you're working out, and rather than guzzling carbs the whole workout, which you probably don't need, mix up an Amino Evolved and sip that throughout the workout. So you're putting branch chain amino acids into your bloodstream, which we know turn on mTOR, which is the protein synthesis machinery in the cells. So as we're working out, we're damaging cells. The cells want to start repairing themselves. You're getting those branch chains into the bloodstream rapidly. Now, granted, if you didn't take them during your workout and you just did a post-workout, whey isolate shake, it would accomplish the same thing. But the branch chains will be doing, if you take it during the workout, it can't hurt, and it keeps you in a more anabolic state, obviously. Likewise, I keep a bottle of amino evolved around. Like if I'm sitting around and I'm doing a lot of work and I just don't have time to stop and eat, I'll drink one of those shakes just because let me put some amino acids into my body so my body doesn't start cannibalizing muscle. So between meals, it's a good way to kind of bridge the gap if you're going to be waiting maybe longer than you need to. I give it to my kids. Like I'd rather my kids drink that that has no carbs in it than guzzling juice that's all sugar. So, once again, I use it intra-workout, and I'll use it during the day when I'm, have big gaps of time that maybe I don't have time to eat. That seems to be the best.
Question about longevity and the different longevity modalities that are currently available. Do you recommend cold plunges, hyperbaric chambers? Have you personally felt any benefits from these or any other of the modern longevity practice? And there is a video of you just a couple of weeks ago, I think, where you're doing the cold plunge.
Yeah. I'm so lazy. I have a free membership to the cold plunge place. And, I liked it. It felt good. You saw the video. It got like almost 1 million views, the thing. And it's a little shocking to your body, but, sometimes shocking your body is good, right? Because it kind of tells your body to kind of like reboot itself. It's good if you're like in a depressed mood and you go in there, it like wakes you up, really. I mean, I was doing swimming in a cold pool last year, which is essentially the same thing because you're in there for like 20 minutes. It might not have been as cold as the cold plunge, but it was pretty cold. The point I'm making is that I think it has a place in the recovery process. I don't know if you should be going every single day cold plunging, especially after a workout, because it does reduce inflammation quite a bit. So some inflammation post-workout is good because it's a signal to your body to start rebuilding itself. So, I would go for maybe cold plunges on days off, or if you're really sore, I had an injury, I think that's a good way to kickstart that. Now, I've also done hyperbaric chambers. Because if you remember, Sid, when I moved from New York to Florida, I was moving a big oxygen tank I had in my bedroom because I had an ozone machine, and I dropped it on my toe, and I almost took the toe off, and I had to have microsurgery on it. And they wanted me to do hyperbaric chamber. I did like 15 sessions or something like that. And it's not for everyone. I'm not claustrophobic like that, but it's like being stuck in a tanning bed for like an hour straight. You can't, and once you're in there, you can't just open if you're freaking out, you can't open up the thing and leave, because you're pressurized in there. I loved it. I slept the whole time, and to hyper oxygenate your body like that has got to be good for you. You know what I mean? But it's very expensive. My insurance covered those sessions because I had an injury. Most people don't have access to a hyperbaric chamber, and it is rather expensive. You had to pay for it. But I think it can only help. It's one of those things. If you have access to it, you might as well use it. It can only be beneficial, but most people don't have access to one. And once again, it's very expensive, versus a cold plunge that's pennies compared to the hyperbaric chambers. But I like alternative modalities. To be honest with you, I go for massage. I try to do once a week. That to me is the most, the recovery aspect of that is so great because it flushes lactic acid. It loosens up areas that on my body that are like maybe too tight from sitting all day or walking too much. And that to me, it clears my mind. It's to me that on a regular basis, that's probably the most important thing you can do as a bodybuilder.
Good question here. And I feel like this is something that you guys can have a very elongated conversation on after hours about this. But there's a study that shows that today's 20-year-olds just have less testosterone in them than their fathers, grandfathers from the 80s when they were in their 20s. We know pollution, microplastics, pesticides used on fruits and vegetables, the antibiotics in farming are the culprit. I say this as a natural, I eat clean. I just don't get bigger and stronger and still hold some fat around the midsection. I can't even grow a beard now in my 30s. Now, the beard part, I guess, theoretically could also be genetic. But what do you respond to that as far as all these factors being around as far as having correlation to reduced testosterone for men in their 20s and 30s today?
Right. Number one, I think that when I was younger, I don't think they never tested for testosterone. Because I remember seeing these kids in school. You knew the kids that didn't have high testosterone. They were not good at sports. They were kind of like soft looking. I think that it's pretty much always been pretty much the same. I don't think testosterone levels have changed in young people. Maybe as we get older, it's changed, but I don't think in young people that the testosterone levels are lower. I just think that they never bothered testing back then, and now that everyone tests everything because we have it, it's more accessible, it's cheaper. We're aware that that could be a problem because I know guys that became bodybuilders, and when they did they looked like soft. Look at Evan Centopani; he was like a soft, mushy, fat kid, and he started taking a cycle of steroids, and all of a sudden, the guy's body transformed. He probably had low testosterone too. Who knows? So it's like the person who says that they can't lose weight and then they're depressed all the time. And then they take some T3 on their first contest diet. And all of a sudden their whole body changes. And then they find out that they had a thyroid deficiency. They just never got checked for it. So I think that a lot of it was undiagnosed low testosterone in men. And I don't think that they would have treated them anyway back then. I just think that wasn't something that they do. People are more aware of it now. And that's why, because I can tell you, my son's testosterone is very high, like mine is. He's aggressive, he's lean, he's got muscle, he's athletically inclined. I don't have to test his testosterone, no, it's high. And mine was like that too when I was young. So I think that there's a genetic component to it. I think we're just more aware nowadays of things like that. Now, the idea that girls are going through puberty younger, I think that has more to do with like the plastics and the estrogenic compounds in the meats that we're eating and stuff like that, because that makes more sense because estrogen can definitely induce, the early onset of menstruation and stuff like that in women. But I don't necessarily know if it's suppressing men's testosterone. Now, why are men's testosterone lower in their 20s? Once again, because they're actually going and getting tested and finding this out. The good thing is that there's something we can do about it now. We can give replacement therapy and we can supplement them so they don't have to suffer, whereas maybe in the past they did. And so I think knowledge is definitely power in this circumstance. And the fact that I always tell people diagnostic testing is your best friend. Okay. Don't just guess, go and get blood work. Don't just guess if you think you have a heart issue because everyone in your family died of a heart attack. Go get a cardiac CT scan. It's so easy nowadays. You didn't have that 20, 30 years ago. We have it now. And I think that knowledge is power.
In a 4 to 6, and it says 4 to 7, I'm assuming he means 4 to 6 week mini cut, would you lower your GH to 3 IU and save the higher doses for growth phases, or keep it high throughout all phases?
Yeah, I only recommend 3 IUs of GH max for people who are dieting for competitions. And you know what? I have no problem with them taking 2 IUs as far as males go. For females, usually 1 to 1.5 IUs is more than adequate if they want to use GH at all. I just think that you're wasting your money if you're taking more than that on a diet type of situation. Now, off season, you could use a little more. Once again, but there is diminishing returns. Once again, I think 4 or 5 IUs a day is plenty. I know, there's some people that do 8, 10, 12, but I don't necessarily know if those guys are actually using real GH. And if they are, I think it's overkill. I think you're wasting your money because I think your liver can only produce so much IGF-1 per day in response to the GH that you're taking. So that if you're taking more than your liver can produce, you're wasting your money at that point, right? So if you take 12 IUs a day and you're still producing the same amount of IGF per day that you did when you were taking 6 IUs per day, you're wasting 6 IUs per day. And that's a lot of money. GH is very expensive, especially real GH. So, less is better over a longer period of time.
So this question is specific to berberine, but the question starts with saying that since you're a big advocate of keeping blood sugars in check, will you make a berberine supplement? I guess I'll expand that to, is there a thought to making a supplement with any sort of herbal supplementation or anything that you feel as if would be a good addition to somebody looking to keep their blood sugars in check?
Yeah. I'm not saying I would never make a blood sugar control product because I think there is a need for it out there and people want it, and especially for the average person. But for the bodybuilder who eats 6 times, and I've said this a million times, I'm going to repeat it again. For the bodybuilder who eats 6 times a day, minimum, right? Tremendous amount of protein, tremendous amount of carbs, a reasonable amount of fat in their diet. Their insulin output or their insulin requirements from the pancreas is very high. Think about it. The average person eats 3 times a day with maybe a snack. You're eating probably double what the average person eats, and you're doing it every single day. That means your pancreas has to work at least double as hard, if not more, than the average person on a daily basis. A lot of times the pancreas can't keep up. And so blood sugars start going up. Now think about it. Exercise, bodybuilding, which is weight training, cardio, sensitizes your insulin receptors. That means it produces more insulin receptors. It makes you more receptive to your insulin. So your insulin works better than the average person. Yet, there are still bodybuilders running high blood sugars in the morning. Why is that? You would think that we would have better blood sugar control. And these are people that are not even using GH. We know GH can be antagonistic to insulin, but forget the guys, take GH out of the equation. Why are regular bodybuilders running high blood sugars in the morning when they wake up? And the reason they're doing that is because the biggest surge of sugar into the blood occurs right before you wake up. It's called the dawn phenomenon. The liver releases a tremendous amount of glucose. But why isn't the pancreas able to keep up with that? When we have the best insulin sensitivity of anyone on the planet, we have low body fat. I mean, no one's insulin sensitivity is better than bodybuilders who do cardio and work out. Yet we're running around at high blood sugars because the pancreas can't keep up, can't produce enough insulin. There's an amount deficiency. There's a deficiency of how much. It's not a sensitivity. So now if you go and take berberine and vanadyl sulfate and try to and chromium and you try to sensitize your insulin receptors more so you can lower the output, so that you can absorb, your blood sugars can go down ostensibly. Most of the time it doesn't really, you're kind of putting a Band-Aid on a bleeding, gaping wound. Okay. You're not really fixing the problem. Doctors will give you metformin. And what metformin does is it just suppresses the liver from releasing glucose. So it Band-Aids up the fasting blood sugars in some situations. So all of a sudden you went from 110 fasting blood sugar when you should be under 90. Now you're down to like 95. Okay. Because the metformin inhibits the liver from releasing glucose. It also inhibits the liver from releasing IGF-1, which is not something we want as a bodybuilder, right? So that's not solving the problem that you don't have enough insulin present. So when you start running these high morning fasting blood sugars, my suggestion is to take to supplement with a long-acting insulin. Because just like you would supplement with testosterone if your body doesn't produce enough testosterone, we want to make up for what's not there. Okay, now if you're a fat couch potato, okay, that doesn't do anything all day, and you're running high blood sugars, I'm not going to give you insulin, okay? I'm going to tell you to stop eating as much, and I'm going to change your diet. And 99% of the time, that fixes a person who's overweight or obese's problem because they have an insulin sensitivity problem and they have an overeating problem. So that's you can't equate the two people together. Likewise, there is a population of people out there that have insulin sensitivity problems. They don't work out. They're not necessarily overweight, but diabetes runs in their family, and their blood sugar control is poor. Okay, you give those people insulin sensitizing agents like berberine, or even a little metformin, or anything else that even some of these new GLP-1 agonists like retatrutide and tirzepatide, they help sensitize insulin receptors, and they actually lower blood sugars, and it actually fixes the problem because they don't have an insulin production problem because they're not eating that much. They just don't have the insulin sensitivity issue. But that's not the case with bodybuilders. So when I see a bodybuilder who's running high blood sugars, I know exactly what it is. It's just not enough insulin.
Question about plateaus as far as fat burning plateaus. Mm-hmm. Trying to burn stubborn body fat, lower gut in my 40s. I train 4 to 5 days, do 45 minutes cardio a day. I eat clean, high protein, low carbs. Should I just do more cardio, cut out the calories? How do you get over those plateaus, the stubborn plateaus when trying to burn fat?
I mean, if the cardio is already high, then that's probably doing more is probably not going to necessarily be better. A lot of times when I see a person stuck, meaning that they're eating really low carbs, they're on a lot of cardio, they're on taking fat burns, and they're not losing, and I'm assuming they're not cheating. I can tell they're not cheating. A lot of times I'll feed them more. You do the opposite of what logic would tell you to do. So I cut their cardio back. Maybe they're doing an hour a day. I cut it back to like 35 minutes. And then I actually give them some carb days. I start feeding them carbs. Not huge amounts, but maybe 35 grams of carbs, 3-4 times a day for a few days in a row, and then I might go back to a low carb, for a day. And then once I do that for about a week or two, a lot of times they start losing weight when I'm feeding them more and giving them less cardio. It's like I tricked their body because their body kind of caught on to what they were doing, so it slowed down its metabolism. And then I kind of tricked the body by giving them this extra food and say, oh, okay, everything's cool. And it goes back to burning fat again. And then I can reduce those carbs back again and increase the cardio, and then they really get lean. So sometimes you have to play little tricks with the body as well. It does happen, and it doesn't happen to everyone. Look, I've worked with people that consistently lose the whole diet, and I very rarely have to change much of anything. But then there's other people's metabolisms that kind of catch on, and they start playing these games with them, and I have to trick the metabolism. The worst thing you can do, and I've had this debate with a few people now about fasting, is that for a bodybuilder, these intermittent fasts are the worst. Or I know guys that don't eat for 2 days straight and they just do water diet. I said, when you do that, number one, you shut down your metabolism. You go to zero. Okay. And the reason you could prove this, when you don't eat, you get cold, right? The reason you're cold is because your metabolism is zero. It's shutting itself off. Okay. When your metabolism is high, you're sweating all the time, right? So you want to be hot when you're trying to burn fat. You don't want to be freezing cold, because that's pretty much telling you that your metabolism is slow or off. So intermittent fasting and long periods of going long periods without food is not good for bodybuilding purposes of getting lean. People think, oh, I'm going to lose weight if I don't eat. That's not the truth. Okay. Fasting is good for people who have destroyed their health, okay, over, 10, 15, 20 years. And they have so unhealthy that you kind of want to reboot the whole body. You want to get rid of the visceral body fat, the excess, subcutaneous body fat. You want to clean out the liver of all the fatty liver that they got. That's what fasting does. It kind of undoes all the damage. But if you eat right on a regular basis, healthy, and you take your fiber and you take your vitamins and everything like that, there's no reason to do anything extreme like that. We know how to lose weight as bodybuilders: small, low carb meals, several times a day. And that's the formula. There's no magic behind it. The more you feed yourself, the faster your metabolism. You just don't want to eat a lot of carbs when you're trying to lose weight. I mean, it's not rocket science here. Why are we going to all of a sudden go from knowing what works, eating a lot and frequently throughout the day, now we're going to eat nothing? It's ludicrous.
Take a couple more questions. The right way to bring up asymmetry, especially in the lats for me, majorly, I've been doing just left arms exercises for a few months, but is that the right way to go about it? Front lat spread, literally only right side visible. So your best advice in terms of improving symmetry.
Yeah, he didn't say whether he has a lack of muscle on the smaller side, or if the muscle's just not open. Like some people just can't open up the lat properly because they maybe they need to get some massage, deep tissue work, because the lat is stuck. A lot of times that's the case. Most people have good symmetry or balanced symmetry. One side's always a little better than others, but if he has a noticeable, lack of lat on one side, it could either be that he's not opening his lat properly because maybe he doesn't know how to, or because it's kind of glued down with scar tissue, or there could be a nerve issue that he's got like a pinched nerve and it's not able to innervate that area properly, so it's not being trained. There is the last possibility, which he's suggesting, is that maybe it's just smaller and he doesn't have any damage to anything. It just happens to be a smaller lat. Maybe he in the past has always used the one side more and dominated, and now he realizes he's out of whack. If that's the case, yeah, I would try to do some. What I do is I would always, even if you're doing like pull downs with this two arms at the same time, always focus on the weak side. So never pull from the other side. The other side is going to work no matter what, because it's the stronger side. Always focus on that. I used to do that with a leg. I had one leg that was a little bigger than the other. We all do. And when I would squat, I would only think about the smaller leg. I would lean into that side. I would push from that side. I didn't even think about the good leg, because I knew the good leg was going to work no matter what. And so it's the same thing. And then if, at the end of your workout, if you want to hit a few extra sets just for that one side, a couple, maybe an extra set of rows, an extra set of pull downs with one arm, that's great. But I wouldn't do like excessive amounts of sets. The key is when you're working the sides together, only think about and mind muscle on the weaker side, and that's going to fix the problem.
Last one about you during your prime. Do you think you ever would have had a career as a power lifter if you had shifted from bodybuilding? I know you're incredibly strong during your peak, but is that something you ever considered, given that you had long arms, long legs, which can be a good trait to have as a power builder. Is that something that you even crossed your mind during that period of time?
I was so scared when I would get under the bar with like 700-pound squats that I was praying. I was like, please just let me not get killed. It's a very scary thing. I give powerlifters huge respect for what they do, because it takes a lot of balls to lift some of the weights that they're doing. You know what my problem is? I didn't want to get hurt. So I never lifted a weight that I felt I couldn't handle. And unfortunately, in powerlifting, you have to try to push weights that you're not comfortable handling, because that's how you get better. So I don't think I would have been a good powerlifter, because I was too vain and I didn't want to tear a muscle and hurt myself, and I just was strong because I was huge, and I knew that if I was strong enough to lift the weight with good form, I should do it, because if I don't, I'm not going to make improvements. So I always tell people I wasn't naturally a strong guy, like from the start. I know guys that in high school were benching 225. I could, if I was lucky to get 135, it was a good day. Once I got bigger, I got stronger, because I was very controlled with the way I lifted weights. I used good form. I heard Jay Cutler talking about this recently. He said, I had really loose form, and he goes, probably if I controlled the weight, more on the negative and really focused more on how I lifted properly, I probably would have been even bigger and would have had more detail in my physique. And I believe that. The negative is a huge thing. You got to control that weight. Now, powerlifters do control it, but at the same time, they push ridiculous amounts of weight. And to me, that's just too scary. I completely respect watching other people do it, but that wasn't something that I was looking to do.
And that's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Right now on the channel, all new episodes of the Heavy Muscle Radio Show, as well as yesterday's episode of After Hours. If you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss anything that we have upcoming on this channel. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.